Welcome, everyone. I am Mike Bauer, the Chief Product Officer at Sopheon. What I do want to try to make this an open and roundtable-y type discussion. One is because I get tired of writing PowerPoint slides and going through PowerPoint slides, but also they just tend to have more interaction and we can learn from each other. And so feel free as we go through this at any point to raise your hand, get Wim's attention or mine, or just interrupt me and let me know what you think, and I'll have some questions as we go. Let me get to sharing my screen. I hope I actually run a split screen, probably like most of you, so I'll probably be steering over here where I can look at the slides. So I apologize if I shrink it too big, too small. They'll all sit on my laptop screen. I think everybody will hate me for the eye trips. But kind of when I was approached to do this, I think one of the ideas for the talk was around enterprise innovation management versus PPM, project or portfolio, project, program, or product, depending on how you want to frame it, portfolio management. And it was this versus that kind of got me. Maybe not everybody thinks this way, but I do a lot of martial arts, so versus is, getting into the octagon type of thing. So what I want to say is, so I took the premise this time of, aren't they on the same team? It's really not, you're picking one or the other. And so really I wanted to use this time to explore them, some thoughts and some things we're doing that from customer discovery and research we're doing here at Sopheon to really get at these things and what are the capabilities and things we need to do to help our customers and things. So I wanted to kind of use that as the framing mechanism. But I do want to start with, what are we really talking about? And at least define it. You may disagree with some of this, and please raise your hand and disagree or add to it. But I kind of want to be able to at least frame this from a beginning. And so when we talk about innovation and what we're trying to do, I look at it as coming down to managing a life cycle. Whether you do it at scale, meaning that's where you have to do this wheel of fun is my take. There's lots of different words we can use. It starts with strategy, which doesn't usually show up in the life cycle. It comes up with ideas or conceiving of what you want to do to get to that strategy. You plan it out, scope it, all those things. You create that innovation, however you define, whatever you're creating, whether it's an idea, a process, a product. You launch it, sometimes quickly, and sometimes it takes years. You maximize that over time. That maximization is really it's in market, whether that market's internal or external, and then eventually it retires. And you rinse and repeat. As probably most of you, if I will say that's what you do. Now the trick is doing that at scale. And so if that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish, well, who's accomplishing this? And so there's I saw a lot of industries and different companies here on this forum. So I kind of simplified this discussion into personas, and I kept them pretty high level because there's a lot of titles, from product managers to brand managers to project managers to VPs of this, innovations of that. So I can break this innovation cycle down to who's doing the work at each of those stages. So that would be the doers. So whether they have a product manager title or a brand manager or an innovation manager or a portfolio manager, they're the ones actually trying to get the work done. They report to leaders that are trying to manage groups of the doers to get that kind of work done. And then what's really been interesting, I joined 8 months ago. Sopheon, part of all the conversations I've had with customers, has really been, what's fascinating is the amount of stakeholders you have. and we have to manage, especially as the organization gets bigger, right? They get bigger, there's just more people that I got to keep in the loop. For those in the agile world, you know, it's the difference between the chickens and the pigs. The pigs are definitely committed to breakfast, and chickens, you know, basically are involved in breakfast of eggs and bacon. And then finally, you can group, there's a set of process owners that are, you know, they're not really worried about what the innovation is or what they're trying to drive through the you know, what it is. They're more, how do you do it? How do you make it happen? And so that's kind of the personas that we want to talk about, and be keeping in mind as we look at EIM versus PPM, you have all these same players in tow. Finally,
Mike, just a little question, maybe, if I can we?
Sure.
I think this is a great concept. I never thought it in that way. The only thing is, for the creation part, are those the leaders? Because I would think that's more the people on the ground.
From a creation standpoint, I look at the leaders as, think of them as the managers that doers report into. So they're not doing the work, but man, they're really responsible. So, you know, I might have a team of portfolio managers. I might have a team of product managers or product professionals if I try to round it up. Yeah. So again, this is a take to try to make it generic, and it's really tough. And maybe there's a different split to these, but this is how we've been starting to think about it at a high level.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Other questions from people? Does this resonate, or like Mike? Yeah, you don't have a clue on this one.
Yep. Please let us know if you have questions in the chat, or raise your hand, whatever is the easiest.
Cool. I'll just keep going. Now, this is where it gets really tricky. Is how do you actually deal with this at different organizations? And part of this is, is as we're trying to think about how we bring, assist our customers to do this, how do we model that? Because, every company has a different organizational structure. Some are in BUs, and some are not BUs, they're geographic, or they have product units over here. And I've talked to CPG companies that the innovation, new product, like a new form of Oreo cookies are done over here, but the 45 SKUs and all the line extensions are done over here. Other companies, it's in a different place. So this is probably the hardest, but to kind of keep this straight from what we're trying to accomplish is, well, obviously you have the individuals and they roll up into teams, and then it gets really interesting. Then you can take groups that teams roll into different hierarchies, and effectively teams very quickly get into, you're at the enterprise. And there's really no other way to model that hierarchy because every company is different. Again, part of this is our internal point of view, because I'll be honest about it, I'm trying to build software that does these things, right? So as we model this, and you guys are out innovating, or we're trying to figure out how do I make it flexible. The point to the organization is that life cycle has to work at the individual, team, and enterprise level, no matter how you're organized. That's what we're trying to solve for. And a small startup of 20 guys has the same life cycle problem, persona, and organizational sets of issues as 20,000 people. This hierarchy changes. And it really comes down to doing this at scale is the key problem we need to solve. And again, I use this as the framing slide to figure out, well, what do we mean by EIM versus PPM, or what's what? And so,
Mike, I think Jennifer has a clarification question.
Sure.
Jennifer, we want to.
Oh, okay. So let me go back. So Jennifer's question is: are the personas corresponding to the steps of the innovation life cycle as shown in the graph? No, they don't line up with that. That's the hard part with this graph. think of them as doers, leaders, stakeholders, and process owners wrap around that life cycle. So people that are doing the maximize, an example I used with a CPG company, the maximizers are doers and leaders and stakeholders that are doing line extensions, rolling out SKUs, worrying about all of the manufacturability and dropping of costs. They all that one little wedge still needs doers, leaders, stakeholders, and process owners from personas. They just may be different people than that do the conceive and plan. Or you can divide it up in any way structure you want. Does that answer your question? Oh, thumbs up? Okay. I got like too many windows going here.
No, go ahead. I'll help you out.
Yeah. So now this is the fun part. So, I went to, well, it wasn't Dr. Google or, lawyer Google. This was just dictionary Google. So I went and did a little Google searching, because when I decided to do this topic, I said, well, maybe I should get a good definition that we can all agree on, because if you have a good definition, then you can compare and contrast. Well, that didn't quite work according to my plan. So this was just one of the 3 sets, and I don't expect you to read it, and it's an eye chart. It's one of 3 definitions when you hit Google that are on the first page. And I didn't even go to the 50, 60, 100 other pages that are Google showed up. I did all the lazy stuff. I just stayed on the first page and got through all the ads. I think the thing here is innovation management I try to highlight in green key things: process, managing, innovation procedures, encompass decisions, external or internal opportunities, set of tools, active organizing, I liked a lot, activities, processes, and policy. Wow, that's pretty all-encompassing, right? That kind of sets a definition of enterprises as enterprise innovation management is a big thing. And actually, a lot of definitions, even Wikipedia, lobs off the enterprise and just calls it innovation management. So give me some feedback. Or do you guys generally run with those kind of definitions? Is that what you have in your head when somebody says innovation management or enterprise innovation management? This would be an interactive part of the presentation.
I always look at it in 2 big buckets. One is to stimulate innovation, and the other one is to manage an innovation portfolio. So those are certainly integrated in here.
Yeah.
I see. Jocelyn, do you have something to add?
I was just going to say that the words creating a new value resonate for me as something I think about when I think innovation management as opposed to enterprise portfolio management or project management.
Right. These sound real expansive, don't they? I mean, which I think we would all expect. I don't think I'm saying anything new to you guys, but other comments? Well, it gets more fun. I'm sorry, was there a comment?
It looks like you have a full agreement.
Okay, yeah. Right. I'm not sure I would go as far as full agreement, but at least people are nodding yes. This is where it gets really interesting. And this was the hard part in even writing the abstract. When you ask about PPM, you get things like portfolio management, just pure PM, which then gets into a whole set of acronyms itself. Product portfolio management. I'm a product guy by my software, hardware, most of my entire adult life. Product is what I think of, but then you get project portfolio, which has a different set of processes. And if you even go as far as a broad definition, the last one is really a definition for investment managers, where I think some of these ideas actually started with, or go back and forth between you're managing a portfolio of investments as an advisor for an individual or a company from an investment standpoint. But again, you see some commonalities and some really interesting language. The selection, prioritization, and control in line with objectives. Well, this one was strategic. Product, Prioritization again, ensure resources, the right products, pipeline of new projects, centralized management, process, current or proposed projects, even portfolio management, the last one, which is really truly out of an investment thesis. I don't remember which company. Process of individuals' investments, managing investments, maximizing, ensuring the capital investment. So you can start looking at those, and that feels a little more narrow, right? And whether you do products or projects or program, when you start really analyzing it, people use these project and programs almost interchangeably. They also use projects all the time. And then you start getting into weird definitions of IT PPM versus, I guess, something else. You know, I look at it honestly as it's some type of portfolio management, because you can create a portfolio out of anything. And a lot of experience I have or I've seen in our customers and people I've talked to over the years in lots of other settings, they slice and dice as they need. Mm-hmm. But I think the key thing here is the prioritization, the control is very specific.
Good. There's a comment from Tanya. Tanya, do you want to read it?
So I'm wondering if when we have those two definitions there, if you could not just say that the PPM is the building blocks that are going to form the EIM. You know, so they are on the, if you take a step back, they could be the same thing, but if you take a magnifier into them, you're going to realize that we're speaking about different levels, product and company.
Right. Right. And this seems a lot more constrained, right? Like you're managing something very specific to get or a set of things, very specific processes. You know, you're actually, and how do you pronounce it? Tanya? Is that right? Or did I get it?
That's perfect.
I think you're a good straight person. Because I think that's where I want to take us to, because I think as I started really looking at this from an intellectual standpoint, as opposed to just an emotional knee jerk, and I've shipped products over my lifetime, you know, I know what this all means. I think that's the kind of the thesis I had, honestly, is this really a building block? Because one feels more constrained. And so let me move. If there's other comments, I should say, let me try to make sure I keep this interactive, because it's not just me being a talking head.
If I look at it from the emotional part, it's the control part is the one that's much higher on the right side than on the left. Right. But you can see one going into the other. So if the innovations are focused on product innovation, then it's more of a part of PPM. Right. If innovation is going more into the direction of enterprise and breakthrough and radical innovation, then PPM may be at a lower level. So you could see that both sides. So your question at the beginning is a good one.
Yeah. Other comments? Awesome. So
I was just thinking
Go ahead, Jocelyn. I'm sorry.
I was just thinking that maybe it's the common language or an agreement of a common language that's the most important here, so that when you're speaking about it across the organization, everybody's on the same page.
Right. Right. Because I do think they get interchanged pretty easily. And, yes. And these definitions kind of lead you to say that what Tanya was getting at, they're really not the same. One doesn't equal the other. And I think that's an important thing as us trying to drive innovation, whatever level of organization you're in, or whatever level of, if you're purely the doer or a stakeholder, is to keep in mind the differences. And I think, Jocelyn, that's a truly interesting thing to bring out. I hadn't thought of it yet. You know, the language we use matters on this. And everybody may have a little different definition, but as long as within your sphere, your company, you're using the same, I think you're right. Then I think maybe that helps us out. The other thing so those are the definitions. As you can see, it's kind of all over. It leads us a couple different questions. So one of the things I'm a big believer in is jobs to be done. And if you're not familiar with it, if you're familiar with all of it, and there's enough people, I'll move on. But I'm a big fan of it for a couple reasons. And the big ones aren't what everybody may think. The reason I like it is it's agnostic to the industry. It's stable over time. And it doesn't tie to technology. Whether you're doing some, a mobile app or a whizzy bang this or chemical that, if you start looking at jobs, you're still getting those jobs done. If you look at the doers, what's a good common language to get into would be the jobs we're trying to accomplish. Not saying that you guys as innovators out, trying to get different innovations done, new products out the door, need to understand these jobs. But as we talk about these EIM versus PPM, common language to Jocelyn's point, and what sits where, to Tanya's point, looking at this from a jobs to be done might help. And so if you're not familiar with it, I took a couple screenshots and some ideas from a couple of the books. These are books I have read, and I would highly recommend them if you're not. The Customers Want was the origination by Ulrich. Jobs to be Done is actually free, the one in the middle. And the Jobs to be Done by Kalbach is from Rosenfield Media, and I thought was really like hands-on tactical. And from that book, there are 5 key elements. You have a job performer, the who, that would be the doer in the persona. The job is what are you doing? Process is how, think of them as little jobs. The needs are, I need to do something faster, more of this, less of that. Very specific, not, hey, I kind of want to do this today, sometime soon. It's very tactical if you look at some of the things. And then circumstances, when and where do you do that? And they define a job as, think of a job as distinct beginning, middle, and end. Not some broad, I want to do better at work, or I want to do something broad. Those are, they would call them an aspirational job. A job is very specific. The other thing is you can start high in the hierarchy. So if you have this broad thing, I want to improve my work skills. Well, how do you do that? Well, I want to go to industry conferences. How do I do that? Well, I got to sign up. Well, then what's the micro job? Actually filling out my name on the website. So you can go, how brings you detailed? Why brings you up? There's lots of different models for this kind of stuff and innovation. You probably have all applied different flavors of, ladders and this 5 why thinking. This is just a different way to think about it. So based on our research, you actually look at EIM and you start interviewing lots of people about what, my favorite way is how many people have ever watched Office Space with the Bobs coming in and they bring the next person in across the table and they say, so what do you say you do here? Well, those are the kind of interviews I've been on for the last 8 months, talking to, customers and potential customers. Like, so what do you say you do? And what we find is there's really 5 key areas. There's a 6th I'll mention, but that's more related to a software provider world. One is, as you would expect, manage strategic planning and execution. Those are very specific jobs that have very specific things they're trying to accomplish. Some of them sound similar to others. There's managed portfolios. That's why I was smiling when Tanya said what she said. There's managed portfolios. I got portfolios of things I got to manage. And then there's manage ideas, which is, the front end piece, the fuzzy front end, no matter you use challenge response, you get other people, or you just create a list. There are ways of managing ideas. Then you're managing products. Again, I have more of a product focus. And then projects and resources, because some of the innovations, as we know, isn't really related to a product. They're part of something else. Maybe eventually ties to products. So in all of our customer interviews, those are the 5 jobs. There's actually another one, which is basically go find information and data, which is, there's bits of data in ERP, sales, CRMs, and others. So there's actually this tactical job of feeding these people and what they do. But those are the 5 jobs. And, now again, it's not 25 years of research, but the perspective is, so far, those are the jobs we keep running across. Comments on this. Does this resonate? Like, yeah, I have other jobs. That one I would love to know if people come up. Again, these are aspirational jobs. There's no beginning, middle, and end to them. Yeah, I know managed products, eventually the product goes away, but that's over for many customers, many of you is over decades, if not years. It's not, something in a time horizon that makes any sense from a job standpoint.
It looks good to me from an innovator's perspective. If you're an innovation leader, one of the other things is that you create an environment, the climate, the culture that stimulates innovation. So I don't know where that would fit in there, but that's not really related to the innovation management itself.
Say that again, Wim. Stimulating?
Yes, as an innovation leader, you're also responsible for stimulating an innovation mindset in the organization.
Oh.
That's not the management of the innovation itself. It's more of the culture.
Yeah, that one would be uncovered in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matt made an interesting comment. Feel free to chime in and open up your mic if you can, Matt, but I'll read it real quick. It's hard, sometimes impossible to create a common definition in a large company because those definitions are native to the different industries and disciplines, and you use them internally at the same time externally. I would absolutely agree, and that's why I was trying to frame these things in generic terms that for each of you, you're going to probably have to twist these around. I mean, in these aspirational jobs, you might not call it a project and a resource or a product. You might call it an offering. You might call it an innovation. You might just call it an idea. And some of these things flow one to the other because you can have interrelated jobs, as much as that sounds like really confusing. Yeah.
And Jennifer agrees with you.
Yeah, context is tough. In as many different industries as I've talked to and been in, it is tough to try to hammer it down. But as part of our job as innovation leaders in different ways, I think that's part of our job, and it's probably why you also come to these, so you can get better at defining and doing definition. The other thing I'll share is, okay, so let's bring out managed portfolios. So that's the aspirational job. So what the heck is the detail? And in this eye chart of text, isn't meant for you to read through every one, but the idea is these bullets, and I know I'm missing some because we're still learning and trying to put it in this framework. These are the main jobs. If I go back, the red bubble, those are the main jobs that somebody doing portfolio is going to have to get at. And you can see that each one of them has a definite, you can think about it, definite beginning, middle, and end. So you define a portfolio. It's pretty straightforward, right? I need to know this is how I'm defining these type of projects and these time frames and these regions and these BUs. That's my portfolio. Job is done. Did I do it? Some people want to do it quickly. Some want to make sure they can inform people. It goes all the way down. I need to update a roadmap. In some of these jobs, I'm sure in some of your industries, you're going to say, yeah, we don't do those. Okay, you don't need to do those jobs. But in a lot of industries, you are doing these things. My favorite one, by the way, for all of these is inform stakeholders. That was like the number one thing I actually heard that was a real pain in the butt. People are still flinging Word, PowerPoint, and Excel documents around, collecting information from all over. It is actually the coolest job in the world if you think about it, because all those aspirational jobs have it. Because us stakeholders are greedy people. We want our information. We want it now, and so that's an interesting job. That's just an aside.
No, it's good.
My enthusiasm with this stuff.
Oh, Jean-Pierre, there's a question.
Yeah.
Jean-Pierre, do you want to ask?
No, actually, it was a comment on your comment, basically on the innovation culture. So I agree that it's kind of side process of managing things, ideas,
right.
products, and resources, and it's about the governance aspect. I agree.
No, I think that's I really think that I do like that. And it may change how this map go. If we repeated the same seminar, this time next year, that may be added, Wim. You might, I'll have to give you credit from now on. But I do agree with it. Moving on. So again, this is a little bit of education, just in case you're not familiar. The way you break down a job. So let's go back here. So now my number 2 bullet is assess product portfolio, collection of products in this one. It could be an access a project portfolio, it could be idea portfolio, however you define the portfolio. So let's break that down. And I'm not going to read all the bullets. The big thing to think through when you're thinking about it is related jobs. So there might be jobs like monitor the strategy, research the market, define a risk model, associated with the portfolio. Those are related jobs. They're not related to assessing the product portfolio. You learn them by interviewing and stuff. Again, not trying to make you experts in this field, because you all have your own products and projects and stuff, but just how you break it down. Then you got emotional and social jobs. Well, I want to establish some confidence. I have some needs. I need to improve the fidelity, reduce the latency. Circumstances. Well, when do I do this? Well, I might do this on a quarterly fiscal basis or some event driven. And then what are the small jobs, the process? And again, this long step is based on our discovery, how you would break it down. And the reason I share it is to put all this in context around just portfolio. You could do the same exact thing with each of those other boxes. What that breaks down to is, let me ask a few more questions for you guys now. So we're trying to accomplish what's on the left. I did that aside more just so you understand the framework. What are you trying to accomplish in the life cycle? Here are the aspirational jobs. So back to the interactive portion of this. Where do you see other linkages? Where do you see these things working together? Do we agree portfolio management is a key part of it, not all to itself? I use portfolio as an example because the key question at the end of this is EIM different than PPM, and how so? If you're going to do a versus, that's what you're trying to get to. So thoughts from people.
Sam, you want to speak it?
Sam's agreeing. A lot of shy people. I keep, all these innovation product professionals, and they're so shy.
Yes, I can talk to mine. I think it is a key part, as I'm very new to managing portfolios. I came from a supply chain background, but when you think about the end-to-end execution of a process, which would get into that project management pieces, to manage the portfolios, you need to understand at what stage are you looking at, because it's going to have different metrics. You need to view it differently. You couldn't view the planning stage the same as the retire stage. So managing the entire life cycle, managing the profile, I think goes hand in hand, not, well, like it is a building block, but I think it more is kind of a different pillar versus a building block in a way. I don't know how to describe that better, but yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted to leave this part as more of a round table on how people perceive and do this. I'm in the building block piece, because without portfolio management of some form, I really can't manage strategy, because otherwise it's just a collection of the problem with this chart for me, and I created it, is that innovation life cycles thing. There's hundreds of those, if not thousands. I mean, I have customers with 10,000 projects in flight. So you're gonna put stuff in portfolios to drive, because one of the big challenges is connect strategy with execution, right?
That's true. And that's why I guess in my mind, I think of it more as a pillar than a building block, because you can still have innovation without managing it well, in my view. If you don't manage it well, you're going to kind of collapse in itself, but you'll still always try to be thinking of new ideas to stay ahead of the curve and keep your business alive. Yeah. But that's my view, and that's just how I think of it in my head.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong to this. Other comments?
I was going to say, when I look at this, I see managed portfolios as the way that you're managing the execution of the strategy. So, because you can't have a strategy without, you can't just plan strategy, you have to execute on it. And the way you execute is to have a portfolio of projects or portfolio of initiatives that are advancing that strategy. So I see that linkage between the managed strategic planning and execution and managed portfolios.
Okay. Other comments?
When I was innovation leader, innovation management didn't do the whole circle, because innovation was supposed to feed into the brands. So if the brands took it on, they were responsible for the execution then. So the innovation management scope was more on the right side of the circle than on the left side. Yeah. There was overlap, but it was mostly in that direction.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people break innovation from apart in certain parts. The innovation is strategize, conceive, and plan, maybe a little bit of create. I think when you look at it as a whole, you see that doesn't add the value to the customer, right? Or the corporation. If you just you get right up to we're going to go do something and nothing ever happens. I think somebody made the comment, I'm sorry, I lost track of who, about, I think maybe it was Jennifer with the you got to execute. You still got to run the projects to completion to actually get the value out of what you're thinking.
No, absolutely. But then you can solve that by starting with the same starting point. So if the brands and innovation have the same problem statements, then you connect kind of. But I see the point. Anyone else? Jennifer, did you have? You mentioned strategy sits in portfolio strategy sits in strategy also.
Yeah. No, I was sorry. The comment on the project execution is Sam. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
The names don't come up as easy. So, okay. Well, we'll keep going because I want to be respectful. And I do realize for our European friends, it's pretty late. This is my payback for my European people at Sopheon get me on the phone at 6 a.m. So I torture the other my European friends late at night. So no, I'm kidding. Yeah. So I think I'm trying to bring it around, at least in the discussion. The point of view I'm trying to put out there is PPM is a part of EIM. That's why I said, Tanya, you're a great straight person. But it doesn't completely overlap based on some of the, not just based on listening to all the comments. It isn't always a thing that drives EIM. It is a separate thing, separate job, as we talked through and looked at, but also it is got its own things it's supposed to do. And I think that's where some of the confusion confusion comes. You know, I try to redo those things as innovation management refers to the jobs performed by this range of people that are driving strategy, tactics, process, and policies to grow and create value for the company and its customers. I took a much more broader view of Mike's definition. Portfolio is a set of jobs provided by people with portfolio responsibilities to manage the selection, prioritization, control of managing investments. Because that's effectively what we're doing, whether it's resources, dollars, widgets of this, or however you measure investment, so that they maximize some set of objectives over a given time frame. Those jobs and those tie to those linkages to strategy and products and those things are about maximizing something. And sure, if you're doing projects, then underlying those, you're doing projects, whether they're waterfall, gated, agile, lean, whatever set of project buzzwords you want to use. But what I would postulate and love to hear feedback is, I think it's necessary but not sufficient for managing the overall innovation processes and programs in the organization. You can have the best PPM and nothing else. What are you managing? What are you trying to drive? So it's one of those necessary but not sufficient. And just in reverse, I could have the best product processes, product management processes, and I mean product management in the broad sense, not the job title sense. Creation, delivery, in market, obsolescence of products, that's product management in non-job title land. And I get the best doing that. But without portfolios and some other things, they're just as off in the weeds as others. So you need all of those things working in concert, and they all have their own processes. So that's at least the model and thinking and taking us through the EIM versus PPM. Any other challenges, or what do you think? Is the view complete? Are there challenges with this model and thinking that we should talk through?
Because I agree with your concept. So you're talking about enterprise innovation. Then enterprise, then innovation should be the broader one, and all the rest falls under it. In some cases, and that depends on what we talked about earlier, what the definition is of innovation, and if innovation is more part of the part of the organization, like on the marketing part only, then it falls under portfolio management. So I can see it both ways. But from an enterprise, I totally agree with your view. Matt, do you want to speak up?
I think conceptually, I think from jobs to be done point of view, I think conceptually the diagram, the structure works. The challenge is the with overlap. Organization is organized in silos on teams, and they don't, they don't the people in the middle. Usually that's kind of like step on people's toes everywhere, right? That's that gets into the territorial battle, terminology battles and all of that, and that's kind of, I feel like this is the challenge conceptually. And if we have a clean slate, and then we can do that. It's the how to organize people doing all those work. That's the challenge. And a lot of legacy, we just stood up a PPM team. They currently focus on the sort of the Horizon 1 project, and now we have Horizon 2 and 3. And who's gonna manage that? And then the innovation team say, we want to manage that. We don't want you to manage that. So that but in the end, it touches a lot of common resources, touches a lot of kind of investment. And how do we allocate that? From a leader point of view, they need a holistic view of how do I make a strategic decision to putting bets on different things.
Right. So do you see, Matt, if you have this common framework, does that help with figuring out who does what? Because think that's the basis of the comment, and I would agree with it, is that, and I think Leanna was jumping in on that as well, is who's managing what, who's doing what. But does this kind of a framework help with figuring out the who?
Yeah, I think it helps to facilitate the conversation dialogues and to get a clarity of who is doing what, and assume that's no other selfish motivation behind it. And I think at least something that this is a topic that I don't know much about it. But this is a topic that I'm dealing with now. So I think that's at least for me, and a lot of things that help me to think about it.
Yeah. What doesn't it help with? And this is for everybody, or Matt, feel free to jump back in. But is there something that really doesn't help with it in what we're trying to do day in? Okay, radio silence.
Mike, just we have 1 more minute left, so we might need to think a little bit.
Yeah.
Wrapping up, although the discussion is very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have much else, so that was it. Again, I'm trying to come back to. I think EIM is the broader term topic, and they fit together. Whether it's a pillar or building blocks, I think some of that comes to the mental model and how you think about it. But effectively, they work. You need one to work with the other to get through it. I don't have anything else. I obviously trying to keep this to the 50 minutes. So if there's nothing else, I will turn it back over to Wim and Kate to wrap up.
Great. Well, good discussion, Mike. We got a lot of interaction despite the late hour in Europe. We still got a lot.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for the session. Thanks everyone for joining and for the engagement. And you'll see in the link, I don't think there's another session after this one today, Kate. So I think this is it, but don't hesitate also to go on the community platform for further discussion and engagement. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.